Coming into focus. Good evening. So I've just gone the hour, so let's begin. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadidhamastu ma Vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, so as per usual, we're here for our Q&A. So if there's any questions, please feel free to fire ahead, either in the chat box or using the microphone. Evening, Roy.
Hi.
Good evening.
You too. Good evening. What time is it over there?
1 in the afternoon.
1:30.
It's 1 in the afternoon.
Oh, 1 in the afternoon. Yeah, here it's 6 o'clock p.m.
That's right. Yep.
May as well be 1 in the afternoon. It's bright and sunny outside. Warm.
Nice. Have you had any questions come up over the course of anything that we've been discussing?
Oh God, I probably have a lot of questions, but I haven't been thinking about it.
Sure.
And maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, overthinking is definitely a possibility, or over cogitating or over reflecting, how you want to call it.
Yeah. Been busy with stuff. So I'm sure this has come up before when nobody asks any questions. So what do you do?
Generally speaking, I will just give it a bit of extra time. Often a question that someone has wanted to ask but hasn't sort of comes back to the surface. Someone remembers something. Give it a few minutes, and if no one in the class has questions, I'll often conclude the class straight away, conclude it early. So
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah. But I also I sometimes give a little bit of time. What I've done in the past actually is leave the classroom open. I've just gone on and done some extra work in case the odd person sort of comes in late, and that does happen. 6 p.m. Pacific time is, it's not the easiest time for everyone in California to get to work-wise, or it's 9 p.m. Eastern, so South Africa time it's something else again. So yeah, people are often, they come in a little late, so I might leave the classroom open for that. So
in Vedanta, some people that I that I know have trouble with the Indian gods. They don't understand. I think that maybe we can discuss that about.
When you say they have trouble with it, what does that mean?
Oh, it's like, for example, yesterday I just met this person on Silver Singles, one of these dating sites, which I don't know if I'll pursue really, but anyway, she happens to be a neighbor, lives like half a mile from me, which is very unusual. Most people live really far from each other in these things. And we were just taught, we don't know each other, so we were just discussing, what we're about. And she mentioned, I don't remember what context, but she mentioned that, oh, I can't really consider Hindu teachings because they seem to be all about all these gods. And as an American, she's a Jewish American, she's a Jewish atheist American. And so and I mean, that's just a label, and that I don't think that I'd have any trouble communicating with her about any of those things.
Yeah, it's interesting. My time spent in California, the Jewish population that I got to know was very open to Vedic or Vedantic ideas, which I found really interesting. And if she's atheist, then even better, because the way that you can treat the Hindu pantheon of gods and goddesses and so on and so forth is as metaphor for the human condition, and as metaphor for growth. So, if you treat the texts that describe them as like epic poems, you might read the Odyssey. What's that? Well, it's an epic poem that describes something, and from it you can actually derive fantastic lessons in self-development and the human condition from a poem about the journey, the Odyssey. The Hindu scriptures can very much be treated in the same way. What can they tell us about the human personality and what it means to become more mature, to grow spiritually? So it's not a matter of accepting it as true or not. It's just a matter of looking at the surface and saying, well, what can I find deeper underneath? You don't have to believe any of it. And that's actually one of the benefits of having many gods, or the benefits of the polytheistic ideology, is that if you want to worship your god, like Ram, fantastic, I'll worship Vishnu. You want to worship Shiva? Okay, you worship Shiva. And then there's a Jesus? Yeah, okay, you worship him. So there's actually room for pretty much all the gods, as it were. So it's a very liberal religion in that sense. Now, of course, in every religion, you get hardliners, fanatics, who want to keep some sort of purity. And so maybe if you were a Muslim wanting to live alongside, there might be some animosity. But in general, the Hindu faith is very open to this kind of treatment. No, Rama is the real God. No, Vishnu is the real God. Yeah, and they can argue like brothers. It's beautifully constructed in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I understand totally. For example, my daughter got interested in Selfrealization Center in LA, and they have a beautiful place out near Malibu, Big Lake. And she subscribed to a certain branch of that, and she had in her room pictures of 5 of the primary people that they have devotion to. And one of them was Jesus Christ, and then there were a few others that I don't really know who they are. And they're more like, well, and so that was puzzling to me. But I've really changed a lot since then. I mean, I changed probably totally. a whole lot. And that was just a few years ago, in my view, and I've become really, really open to all of that. And I'm really happy about that. I'm really glad I did that. And my daughter's kind of like opened her mind too to Vedanta, because I think there's a real connection between that religion, I mean that branch or whatever it's called. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, Hinduism follows after Vedanta philosophy. So the Vedic period was before Hinduism, but because they obviously arose in the same geographical location, Hinduism drew a lot from the Vedanta philosophy for its own philosophy, for its ethos, for its, so yeah, there's a lot of similarities in Vedantic thought and Hindu thought, because they're sort of parent-child type relationship.
So is Vedanta separate? I mean, not separate, of course. We don't. It's kind of like an inappropriate way of even talking about it, but I think are they related?
From Hinduism? Yeah. So yeah, no, Vedanta is separate from Hinduism in the sense that Vedanta can continue to exist if Hinduism never did. So you can still have Vedanta as the set of Upanishadic texts and their commentaries and so forth, Bhagavad Gita. You can still have those, and Hinduism doesn't need to exist for those to be present. But Hinduism could not have arisen without the Upanishadic texts, without the Vedic thought. So, like I said, it's that parent-child relationship. Hinduism can't exist without Vedanta, but Vedanta can exist without Hinduism.
Oh, yeah, I had no idea. I don't know a whole lot about the particulars.
I mean, that's a little bit of an oversimplification, but generally speaking, that's the relationship between the two.
I remember when I was in junior high school, I had a social studies teacher, and I don't know why I remember this so strongly, because I was only about 13 years old, but I remember it really strongly. And he was criticizing the Indians because he said, oh, these people are all starving and there's cows all over the place. And I think people still think that in a way. They don't bring that up anymore. That's something that's kind of not not put up as an example of anything anymore. I don't hear that from people at all. Not that I, don't really talk to a lot of people. I don't know that many people, but I certainly wouldn't bring that up as a reason to do it for anything. Really. Did Vedanta precede say the Old Testament?
I'm not too familiar with dates per se, like comparison dates. I think the Old Testament is 2,000 years old? 2,500? Is it more than that? I believe Vedanta, the Upanishadic texts have been dated between 2,000 and 5,000 years. So how close they were, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, the reason I ask is that it seems that from my limited exposure and understanding, understanding of it, it seems that at the mystical side of Christianity and Judaism, even Kabbalah, it seems like what you bring out, and we're discussing these basic principles, that there's a real, it's almost like they derive their understanding from the Vedanta. But I also think that the human spirit, the human period is letting go of the opinions and all the things that prevent you from really manifesting true understanding, are independent of, I mean, there's something in the human, in being a human, without the discussion of the particulars, because, you know, without the particulars that runs through it, a fundamental spirit of love, of happiness, true bliss.
Yeah, I mean, the question is though, how do you let go of those?
Let go of those qualifications, and isn't that basic? I mean, that to me seems.
No, you were saying earlier that, you know, as a human being, we need to let go of the thought patterns and so forth.
Yeah, right. Let go of the opinions, the labels.
So how do you go about letting go of those?
That's a trick. That's very important, and I think that means manifesting the one true nature from the Buddhist example.
What does that mean, manifesting the one true nature?
Is manifesting the one true nature is to let go of all those concepts, definitions, opinions, thoughts. When you let go of all that, then.
So what causes that letting go? How do you make that happen?
I think there's a lot of ways of doing it. One of them we speak of, or I've heard about, devotion. It's one way.
Mm-hmm.
Intellect is another way. And then certain, what they call upaya, I think it's called, skillful means in the Buddhist context, which is really kind of, that's a very difficult thing to do. In the Buddhist context, what the line that I was involved with would have people do zazen, meditation, which is essentially letting go of your thoughts and being present, and understanding that it's easy to conceptualize and think that you really understand something with concepts. It's like removed from you through deprivation, certain kind of austerity. For example, sitting in that meditation hall in the middle of winter at 10,000 feet in a Zen temple that is in the mountains, which there is one associated with the line that I was in Baldi, which is about 10,000 feet. So in the wintertime, even if it doesn't snow, there's, it's freezing cold, and some people get frostbite even.
Yeah, that practice of zazen and other meditative practices like that are beneficial for someone who understands the practice. The problem is that it's very easy to give the instructions for it, and to follow the instructions without understanding the practice. And when there's no understanding of the practice, it loses its potency and can actually be used or appropriated by the ego so that it actually retards spiritual growth. And so this is one of the potential problems of the mindfulness craze, is that it's been divorced from its philosophical and moral and ethical underpinnings, and it's now just a technique to become more calm, to observe thoughts, to rise above them, to float above the turbulence of the mind, which is a nice sedative, and it works for a while, but it doesn't address the cause of that turbulence. And in fact, it can lead to more of a suppression of it, especially if we think that by doing our meditative practice, we are somehow becoming more mature. What we may actually be doing is justifying simply maintaining that position of dissociation from the mind rather than properly integrating it and existing beyond it. Atman is all pervading. Atman is not outside the mind. And so practices which push the mind away can be useful to some degree, but if we think that's it, then we're actually promoting the notion of segregation and suppression. I'm suppressing myself from my mind. I'm segregating myself from my mind. The reality is all pervading. It is in the mind. It is the mind and exists beyond it. So to use the meditative practices when you don't properly understand really what you're trying to achieve, which is not a separation from pain and suffering, but rather a complete transcendence of the space in which it exists, then it can be used for what's often described as spiritual bypassing. So yeah, it's interesting that that these practices have become quite common because, as we say, they are relatively easy to transmit the instructions and to follow them.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. And there's a lot of that in all the religions. Maybe in Buddhism itself, there's a branch called Soka Gakkai, for example. And that these people, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's where they repeat the first line in this Lotus Sutra, which is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. And that religion initiates people by teaching that if you sincerely repeat that refrain over and over and over again for long hours, that then you will attain a certain place where all your desires are satisfied. And it's a good example of misappropriation because people join it because they want things and they think this is a way to get things, or and things like they want a girlfriend, a particular girlfriend, or they want money, or they want status. So it's like praying to get these worldly things. And that's why they do it. And it's a hook, because I think the theory is, for those who are more really understanding, not totally understanding, but I think it's like a hook to get people involved in that practice. And because if you do a lot of if you do chanting, if you use that method, it's easy to use it to manipulate the mind. And so the mind gets to this point of letting, you let go of all your problems, because your mind is so tired of by saying this thing over and over again. And then they actually do feel this, they attain a certain happiness doing this. But that's really antithetical to the fundamental, it's antithetical to Zen, for example, but it is the Buddhism too. In fact, that has something to do with how I started practicing Buddhism. But that's a long story, and it didn't last very long. But that really prompted me to take up the practice of Zen, is to find something that wasn't what was so transparent to me as doing a religious practice to aggrandize and your ego, to increase your worldly, all the things actually that the original Buddha did not preach. It was like he did that because he wanted to be free of those things. But I'm sure. Yeah, and what you just said about mindfulness and those things, it truly resonates with me. I see that. It comes full circle in a sense where some people will want to be free of their initial indoctrination by their parents and the society, because it's so hard to understand all the pain, suffering, and evil, and all the stuff that you can easily see and create for yourself in this world. By seeing it, you strengthen it. It becomes all the more real. All the horrible things that people, Ukraine and stuff, all that. But they want to let go of that stuff. But then they come full. It's easy to come full circle, and in the guise of following some new age understanding, they just create this huge edifice, which can just be whatever they thought they were freeing themselves from. I'm sorry I didn't really put some thought into today's session. I should have.
No, that's fine. We often have others who join who might ask a question, and yeah, sometimes it's fine. You just want to sort of join in and listen to the discussion. You don't have to necessarily bring everything. It only falls to you if you're the only one who turns up. That's the only time it's. So feel free to turn up if you just to listen if you want to listen.
Yeah, I figured I would probably do that, but I didn't even look very carefully at what today's class was going to be about. So it wasn't a conscious decision, more or less. I enjoy, I'm not so much enjoy, but I find meaningful whatever arises in this Zoom session with you.
Yeah, that's been good. Thank you.
I'm sure after this session, whenever it is over with, then something will come to me as, oh my God, that's something I
yeah.
ask about. Are people who are there Hindus that are atheists?
To be a Hindu atheist is to be what you might call culturally Hindu, but religiously atheist. I'm sure there's someone in the 1 billion Indians who would call themselves that. Yep. It probably means that you observe the festivals and the holidays and you understand the meaning as metaphor, but you don't ascribe to the actual existence of gods, and you don't feel that it constrains you to act in a certain way. So yeah, I'm sure there are Hindu atheists, and just as you said, there are Jewish atheists. What does it mean to be a Jewish atheist? Same thing.
Yeah, I think it's very common among Jewish people, relatively common. In fact, one of my best friends, one I've known a long, long time, is Jewish, and he's very much an atheist, but and that's another thing too. It seems to me that in this thinking world, that you can be an atheist from the thinking world part of, which is almost every moment of one's life, I think, is it not? In this thinking world, or in this human world, I don't know what you're going to call it, it's easy to be an atheist. I'm speaking for myself, I think, primarily, of course, and yet the Brahman is not a thinking. I don't see it as a thinking thing. It's something that transcends thinking. It transcends.
Yeah, that's the way it's described. It's one of the. I mean, that's the core principle of Vedanta philosophy, which was that the reality is not something that is grasped by the intellect, felt by the mind, or perceived by the senses.
Exactly.
Mm.
So I see that you can be an atheist, and then you can also be not an atheist.
Mm-hmm. Yep, both options are there.
I could not believe in God. I think I still cannot believe in God as an object. I cannot believe in God as an object or concept. Yet, among Americans, statistically, Americans are very, very much, by percentage, very much into believing in God. Yet I think they're all really not believing in God. I mean, there's a few, a small percentage that maybe have been exposed to say Vedanta or Buddhism, maybe, but most Americans say they believe in God and all that good stuff, but they don't know what they're talking about, because it's just a mind creation, just a relative thing based on your minds, on your mind thoughts, and the same thing that, creates your memories and your selective memory, of course, and everything like that. So I guess that's why it's better not to even go there with other people. You don't want to talk about stuff like that.
I mean, yeah, if there's a reason to do so. If there's not, I mean, there's no hard and fast rules as to whether you should or shouldn't.
Right. Yeah. There's no hard and fast, of course. One thing that I did, I was poking around the internet for a while until kind of recently, and I'm not doing that anymore, really. But in what I found is a whole realm of something called non-duality, American style, Western style. And they talk about things like this, the me doesn't exist, and things like that. They try to describe things that can't be described yet. It's kind of confusing, so I just stopped looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a standard, it's a really good response to any kind of this sort of knowledge, which is if it doesn't naturally resonate with you, it doesn't appeal to you, then yeah, that's a good reason that to discontinue.
Yeah, I did that.
Follow your own nature, follow your curiosity, follow what makes sense for you. So
yeah, I don't categorically say that that they're false or they're full of it. You know, they're deluded, whatever. I'm not going to say that. I don't think so. But it doesn't really resonate with me. What you say does resonate with me, and so you'll see me a lot.
Oh, good.
But what I don't really trust is people saying they really understand something, and yet, do they really? I don't know.
Well, I mean, each person's talking from their own frame of reference as well, which means that when they understand it, they have a specific way of what that means. And when it comes to spiritual concepts, yes, it's true. Most people will understand it, but they'll understand it to their level. And there is more to understand. There's a deeper way to understand it. The analogy of, say, a science education. When you're 12 years old, you might be taught a model of the atom. And you won't get into, I don't know, all of the wave equations of quantum theory. You'll get a simplified model. So does the 12-year-old understand the atom? Yes, to her 12-year-old level. At 16, you get a different one. At university, you get a different one. Postgraduate university, you get a different one. Each model improves on the last. And at each stage, you can say, yes, I understand it. And you're right, you do understand it. But the important thing is to know that your thinking can still advance, and that there's more to know, and there's a more sophisticated, more accurate, more elegant, more useful way to look at it. As long as you keep that, then yes, I understand it at my level. The problem is when people fail to recognize that my thinking is not optimum. There's more to reach. There's more maturity to gain in this.
Yeah. I agree, totally. Do you think that one of the things that what I've seen on these folks that get on the internet and talk about non-duality, they say that the me, the self with a small s, doesn't exist at all.
Again, treat it like a metaphor. Treat it like poetry. Treat it like something which has a certain degree of literal value and a certain degree of suggestive or non-literal value. You're trying to describe something which cannot be described. Everything that we say about it has some validity, but it's limited. It's never going to capture it. The notion that this self does not exist is absolutely true from a certain perspective. I know that sounds like an oxymoron. Absolutely true from a certain perspective. It feels true from a certain perspective. So the analogy of the rope and the snake can be used here. There's a rope sitting in the garden. A boy walks past it and sees it as a rope. He talks to the father about the rope and he talks to the father about the snake and they discuss the snake. Does the snake exist? Well, there's a perspective from which you can say, no, the snake doesn't exist. There is no actual snake. There's a thought of a snake in the boy's head. Ask the boy, does the snake exist? He's going to say yes. And we can say, yes, the snake exists for him. So why deny what he's experiencing? For him, it does actually exist. And he acts as if the snake is real. And everybody who sees that snake will do likewise. And if enough people see the snake, they all think the snake is there. They all act as if it's real. To all of these multitude of people, the snake exists. And who has the authority or the position to say something such and such does or doesn't exist? So which is it? Does it exist or does it not exist? Well, it depends upon the perspective that you're taking. Small self. ego, individuality, does it exist? Depends upon the perspective that you're taking. No, it doesn't exist. It's as imaginary and illusory as the snake is to the boy. Does it exist? Yes, of course it does. It does for me. And for me to try and force myself to think or believe that this individuality doesn't exist is, again, a suppression of what is true for me. It's one thing to have it as a piece of information, but it is actually true for me that this individuality exists. So from that space, yes, the individuality does exist. What is the individuality? Well, that's like the model of the atom. That will continue to evolve over time as our psychological and spiritual growth advance.
Understand. And when we live in this world, do the things we have to do to survive, actually, we need to make, all the things. And so while we're living in this world, we are living as though it's real. Is it enough just to know that it's not really real, but I am responding and interacting as though it is real? Is there a problem there?
There's no problem. The important thing is to just suspect that what you think is true is not. Now, forget about the existence of the ego, the individuality. Start with what you can suspect might be not true. And so you start at a very relative level. You start at the level of my beliefs about your favorite hot button social issue. Start there. What the other political party believes is such and such. This religion feels this way. This is what's true about this, that, or the other. Start to just entertain the possibility that what I think is true is not true. That's fairly easy to do with these very gross elements. Get used to doing that. Just get used to doing that. Maybe what I think is not true. You can even add it. You want a mantra to chew on? Maybe what I think is not true. Forget the first line of the whatever that text is. Maybe what I think is not true. Start with that. And gradually, as you let go of your attachments to what's out there, that same thought will continue inwards. Maybe what I think about the existence of the ego is not true. Let it be natural. Anything else is trying to force ripen it. And so follow what is true for you. This is what the whole philosophy is. It's following the truth. Knowing that what I think is the truth is not, but I'm going to follow it where I see it anyway. It's a little bit like if you're, chasing a bird. You can't look up in the sky because, that'll hurt your neck. So what do? You look down at the ground and you look at the shadow. You follow the shadow. Now, you know that the shadow is not the bird, but if you want to follow the bird and capture it, you've got to follow the shadow. What I think is true is the shadow of real truth. I know that what I think is true is not the real truth, but to get there, I'll follow what I think is true. I'll follow the shadow of truth to get to the bird.
I can follow. So in doing the things that we do to make a living and all that, that the basic body needs to be taken care of, I guess. I guess maybe that's what we do. It's like following the shadow. Is that right?
No, following the shadow meant an active search for something. or you're following something that you've highlighted or indicated. Once you've spotted the bird's shadow, you can keep your eyes on it and just follow it wherever it goes. In a similar way, there are things that you know to be true, that you cognitively or intellectually know them to be true, and you feel them to be true as well. Sometimes there's things that we feel to be true that we don't intellectually agree with, and vice versa. There's things that the intellect thinks is true, but the mind doesn't feel. So where we find that confluence of truth, of what we know and feel to be true, follow that path, whatever it tells you. But while you're doing it, there must be the remembrance that what I think is true, what I take to be true, is not. Because the moment we take what we're looking at to be true, then we no longer give it the freedom to evolve and change. So if I think it's true that the way to gain true satisfaction in life is to be unselfish, that will work for a while. It's really, really true for me. And if I start to forget that there's something beyond that is more true, then I'll never get out of unselfishness, and it will find a limitation for me. And
yes,
I'll eventually end up short of what I want, frustrated even with my unselfishness. So always remembering that what I take to be true could be wrong means that when someone, or when you come across the idea, unselfishness is good but limited, you're open to that. When you hear it from someone else, you say, oh, that person doesn't properly understand. Selfish, it's very clear in the Gita on this chapter, on this verse, that unselfishness is the way to attain. So, yeah, that person can have their opinion, but we're right.
Mm-hmm.
You've lost sight of a better, deeper way to look at it. And you're lost even worse because you're not open to having your mind changed. So that's the key. That's the thing to continue to remember. Maybe what I think is wrong.
Yeah, thank you for that insight. I find myself actually moving in that direction of letting go of being so sure of anything like that. Really, it's becoming like understanding how it's not really it. There's something more than that, and so therefore, what I see as what I see is not really the answer. There's a better that is leading, or somehow it's revealing things that I couldn't, that wouldn't be revealed to me unless I had that. It's not really a doubt, but understanding that that I previously may have felt so sure about really is just not that. It's not the last word. There's something. There's something that's more real. It sounds funny because real would really be that it's real. It's not more or less. It's, yeah. Is it possible to really to really understand that one true nature? To really understand the whole, this Brahman?
I mean, the texts say yes, there are people who claim to have done so. That point is, well, that question is really one you should have to be agnostic on that point in order to relate to it. That you cannot know anything about that. If it is unknowable, then it's also impossible for you to know if it's knowable.
Right.
But you don't need that to practice. You don't need that to advance. All you need is faith in a more mature self.
Yeah.
Faith in deeper knowledge that it exists, and move forward. And eventually, if there is a cliff, you fall off it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Those are the kind of things that I say glibly, almost the gifts that my wife gave me in dying for me, in a sense, dying, me being with her when she died, and being so close to her that I felt it. And then I felt that I just felt that there's things I don't understand, I don't know, and that I used to say I knew. Yeah, there's no God. How could there be? Things like that. But when before my wife died, I would tell people or tell myself I'm an atheist, but I don't do that anymore but on the other hand, I'm such a pattern that I sense that the thinking mind, which is the mind that it's all around, that defines everything around me. It doesn't really define everything. It seems to define everything around me. In that mind, using that mind, I can't believe that stuff, but I know it's true. And this revelation came about because of my wife. I probably wouldn't be able to be a part of what you see me right now with being interested in understanding Vedanta if it wasn't for that. So that's a wonderful gift that was given, that I got. Wow, hour is almost over.
All right. If you've got any other questions, we can continue with them. Otherwise.
No, I don't have any questions right now.
All right. Oh, well, thanks very much anyway. Yeah. It was nice discussion.
Thank you very much. Yes, it was a wonderful discussion.
All right. All right. Thanks, Roy. Take care, mate.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Catch you again.